you guys know, obviously, I'm covering Assange's case very closely, and this is a clip from the White House, Biden speaking, and then I'll comment further once I've played it.
President Biden, do you have a response to Australia's request that you end Julian Assange's prosecution?
I didn't hear you.
Do you have a response to Australia's request that you end Julian Assange's prosecution?
I'm considering it.
You're do you have a response?
So he's asked whether they will drop the charges, and he says, we're considering it. Well, how benevolent of you, Mr. Biden. You know, I'll just remind you, Biden had 4 years now to drop these charges. And yes, I'm going to be pessimistic because I know what goes on in this case. And they've tried everything, you know, from thinking about killing Assange to kidnapping him, poisoning him. So yeah, I expect nothing less but dishonesty. Joe Biden had 4 years to drop this case, which Donald Trump started. Nothing. Now, because the movement is growing a bit, and it's an election year, he's inclined to say and drop hints like this. I'm not convinced until I see Assange outside the prison walls, okay? Until I see him outside of Belmarsh, then I'm convinced. Because until then, this is suspicious. I don't trust CIA. I don't trust Joe Biden. I don't trust the US administration. He's the one prosecuting him, so why would he show any mercy? It's only in his interest to pretend to show mercy. So unless I see Assange outside the walls, I'm not convinced. And I think, you know, I think it was Margaret Kimberly, who is who also put it very well. And I'll show you what she wrote. She said Biden has had 3 years to consider anything about Assange. All of his pronouncements between now and November are suspect. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's nothing else to say on the topic. That's it. You know, the Americans, they have until, they have about a week until the 16th of April to clarify their assurances that they've given to the British state. I mean, to me, this is ridiculous to watch because, don't get me wrong, the British government know this as well. But they're pretending they don't know. They know the Americans are trying to kill him, and they know that the assurances are worthless. And that's what's scary, is that the Americans can say anything they want, they can lie openly, and the British government will just say, yeah. And then when it comes time to hold them to account and say, hey, you lied, you gave this assurance, and now Assange is in your custody, and you're putting him in special administrative measures, etc., you're violating his human rights, the British government won't even bother taking the Americans to court and saying, well, you did give us this assurance, you have to do something. Because remember, I can't go to the court and make the British government do anything. The assurance is not to me. The assurance is to the British government. So it's the British government that in the event of violations has to go and contest in court. And you can't trust them to do that. So we have two governments now that we're fighting instead of one. Because one of them is a liar and the other one is just going along with the lies. So, you know, you can't trust either one. This is a big problem. And for me, this is particularly egregious because, I mean, I did work on these assurances. I basically published previous ones that the Americans had given, and I proved that they're liars. You can't trust them. And it's the British government, the judiciary, they just ignored it. You know, they acted like there's nothing wrong. You know, it's like they're burying their heads in the sand. They're burying their heads in the sand. So when you're dealing with that, I mean, the Americans could say, for example, tomorrow, because they have a deadline until the 16th, they could say, for example, yeah, you know, we promise not to violate his human rights. We promise not to put him in special administrative measures. We promise not to induce any suicide. We promise, etc. Blah 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 blah. They could even say we promise to give him water, a cup of water, and they'll violate it. I don't trust them. Neither should you. If you know anything about this case, you shouldn't trust them. And the fact that it's come to this stage, it's come to this point, where the British government, the judges were basically saying, well, everything else in this case in the appeal is thrown out, and the only thing we care about is we want to give the Americans a second chance to make themselves look good before we rubber stamp the extradition. That is also scary, because there are lots of things wrong with this case. All of the dozen or so points that Assange was bringing forward should have been allowed to go ahead to an appeals court, and they just threw it out. That exposes their motivations